Echoes of Partition, the resurgence of Muslim separatism and its threat to national unity. Written Rakesh Krishnan Simha. As India's Muslim population nears the 25% mark, echoes of the past demand for a separate Muslim homeland grow louder. From Shaheen Bagh to violent riots, the nation faces an existential question. Will India succumb to the forces of separatism once again, or can it unite in the face of an increasingly emboldened minority? New Delhi is one of the most heavily protected capital cities in the world. The Indian Army's Elite One Corps is based less than an hour away in Mathura and consists of approximately 100,000 heavily armed troops. The celebrated and fierce Rajputana Rifles Regiment, with thousands of battle-hardened soldiers, is based in the Delhi cantonment. The 103 Battalion of the Rapid Action Force is based in Wazirabad in North Delhi. The National Security Guard, the country's primary counterterrorism force, is based in Palam, minutes from the heart of the city. Plus, there's the Delhi Police, with a sanctioned strength of 84,536 cops. Despite such overwhelming firepower available to the government in Delhi, in 2019, a ragtag bunch of Muslim anarchists protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Act was allowed to camp out at Shaheen Bagh, block a key arterial road, and hold an entire city hostage for months. The protests were overtly Islamic and anti-Hindu in nature, with Muslims carrying posters saying F*** CK, Hindutva, and shouting slogans like Jinnah, Wali Azadi. The reference was to Muhammad Ali Jinnah's two-nation theory, which unequivocally declared that Muslims cannot coexist with Hindus. As per this theory, which is still supported by hundreds of millions of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent, Muslims and Hindus are two separate nations having separate religions, customs, cuisines, and languages, and therefore, Muslims should be able to have their own separate homeland in the Muslim-majority areas of India. Essentially, what the Muslims at Shaheen Bagh were saying was they wanted the freedom to break India yet again and create multiple Pakistans within India. Growing separatism. Emboldened by their rapidly growing numbers, Muslims across India are currently on a separatist spree. A Muslims-only apartment building in Greater Noida near Delhi comes with a mosque and a madrasa. In Kerala, a builder is offering Sharia-compliant apartments aimed at Muslims who also have faith in money power to make room for their religious beliefs. India's first Sharia-compliant township, Halal Park, is getting ready on the Kozhikode-Wayanad border in Kerala. Designed as part of the Markaz Knowledge City, the Halal Park is an initiative of the conservative Sunni Muslim group, Markazu Sakwafati Sunniya. A Halal Park is a miniature Muslim nation that allows only Muslims to live exclusively following religious beliefs and customs. In this gated community, Islamic laws and practices will be followed in colleges and apartments. Sharia teaching colleges, Sharia-compliant apartments, hotels, and office complexes will make Halal Park an Islamic nation within India. Meanwhile, in Mumbai and nearby areas, only Muslims allowed advertisements are popping up on property portals while selling and renting apartments. Liberal Hindu politicians are adding their 2 bits to enhance the sense of Muslim separatism. In 2023, Telangana Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao promised to set up a special information technology park for Muslim youth in Hyderabad. Author and JNU professor Anand Ranganathan comments, "Secularism in this country has transmogrified into appeasement. This is not welfare. This is warfare." Muslim mindset in India. Muslim separatism is as old as the earliest Islamic invasions of India, but it was in the late 19th century that the Muslims began clamoring for a separate nation, and it was in the 1920s and 1930s that the demands for a distinct Islamic nation became strident and persistent. This was the period when Muslims resorted to religious riots against Hindus at the slightest provocation. By the 1940s, Muslims represented 1/4 of the total Indian population, 94.5 million people, or 24.3%, as per the 1941 census of India. And that is when the Muslims of the Indian subcontinent declared they would have nothing less than Pakistan. 100 years later, the Muslim population in India is again nearing the 25% mark. Once again, Muslims are emboldened to attack Hindus in Delhi, Bengaluru, and even in places like Odisha, where they are still a small minority. These riots have left deep scars on the Hindus who lost their loved ones, homes, and properties despite having the police force and administration dominated by Hindus. Ordinary people are questioning if we are headed towards further partitions. Let's take a deep dive into the previous century when Islamic separatism first reared its ugly head and set off the process that led to India's dismemberment. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, jurist and chairman of the Constitution Drafting Committee, was among the leading intellectuals of the pre-partition era. He developed an accurate understanding of the Muslim mindset. He offers the best explanation for why a section of Indian Muslims is perpetually in civil disobedience mode. Among the tenets, one that calls for notice is the tenet of Islam, which says that in a country which is not under Muslim rule, wherever there is a conflict between Muslim law and the law of the land, the former must prevail over the latter, and a Muslim will be justified in obeying the Muslim law and defying the law of the land. The belief that they have religious sanction to defy a non-Islamic government is the reason why Muslims burnt trains and destroyed public property as a form of protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act. This is why they resist polio vaccination. This is why Muslims chase away census officials. Arguing for the complete exchange of populations, Ambedkar wrote, "How far will Muslims obey the authority of a government manned and controlled by the Hindus?" The answer to this question does not need to call for much inquiry. To the Muslims, a Hindu is a kafir. A kafir is not worthy of respect. He is lowborn and without status. That is why a country that is ruled by a kafir is Dar al-Harb, a country that is at war with Islam, to a Muslim. Given this, no further evidence seems to be necessary to prove that the Muslims will not obey a Hindu government. The basic feelings of deference and sympathy, which predispose persons to obey government authority, do not simply exist. But if proof is wanted, there is no shortage of it. It is so abundant that the problem is what to tender and what to omit. Another tenet that operates against nation-states such as India is that Islam does not recognize territorial affinities. Its affinities are social and religious and, therefore, extraterritorial. This is the basis of pan-Islamism, writes Ambedkar. It is this which leads every Muslim in India to say that he is a Muslim first and Indian afterward. It is this sentiment that explains why the Indian Muslim has taken so small a part in the advancement of India, but has spent himself to exhaustion by taking up the cause of Muslim countries, and why Muslim countries occupy the first place, and India occupies second place in his thoughts. Ambedkar adds that a key defect of Islam is that it is a system of social self-government and is incompatible with local self-government because the allegiance of a Muslim does not rest on his domicile in the country, which is his, but on the faith to which he belongs. To the Muslim, ubi panis ibi patria, where there is bread, there is my country, is unthinkable. Wherever there is the rule of Islam, there is his own country. In other words, Islam can never allow a true Muslim to adopt India as his motherland and regard a Hindu as his kith and kin. That is probably the reason why Maulana Muhammad Ali, a great Indian but a true Muslim, preferred to be buried in Jerusalem rather than in India. The problem with Indian Muslims is they see themselves not as a community within the Indian nation-state, but as a nation within a nation. This means Muslims are working independently of and not in cooperation with the other communities. Their sense of victimhood is solely because they find it unbearable to live as normal citizens in Hindu-majority India. Ambedkar explains, a people who, notwithstanding their differences, accept a common destiny for themselves as well as for their opponents, are a community. A people who are not only different from the rest, but who refuse to accept for themselves the same destiny which others do, are a nation. It is the non-acceptance of a common destiny that alone can explain why the Muslims feel they are a nation. Or as Muslim League leader Muhammad Ali Jinnah said, Indian Muslims are a nation within a nation. This seems to be a phenomenon that Indian Muslims have exported to the West, where they are creating nations within nations. According to Ambedkar, if Muslims persist in their view of themselves as a different nation, it cannot but have the effect of rending the state in fragments. The Dalit politician said this in 1941, 6 years before India was divided. Uncompromising attitude. Far from cooperating with Hindus, the Muslims seem ready to challenge them. In 1926, there arose a controversy about who had won the Third Battle of Panipat, fought in 1761 between the Indians and Afghans. The Muslims contended that it was a great victory for them because the Afghan ruler Ahmad Shah Abdali had 100,000 soldiers while the Marathas had 400,000 to 600,000 troops. The Hindus replied that it was a victory for them because it stemmed the tide of Muslim invasions. The fact is the Maratha army at Panipat had between 45,000 and 60,000 fighting troops against Abdali's 100,000 Afghans. The Marathas were so sure of victory that they had allowed more than 200,000 non-combatants, women, children, and the aged, to accompany their army. These were pilgrims who had tagged along and were planning to take a dip in the Ganga River after the anticipated Maratha victory. Weighed down by this unwieldy mass of humanity, the Maratha army lost its mobility. But it is also a fact that the Marathas took down a large number of Afghan soldiers with them. This massive loss of life deterred the Afghans from ever entering India. Within a decade, the Maratha army was back in the north, retaking the lost territories and punishing those who had betrayed them at Panipat. Anyway, wild claims are common among Muslim politicians in the Indian subcontinent. For instance, Hyderabad-based Akron Owaisi once said, "Remove the police for 15 minutes. We will finish off 100 crore, 1 billion Hindus." Similarly, the Pakistan army has claimed on separate occasions that one Pakistani soldier is equal to 10, 6, and 3 Indian soldiers. The ratio keeps declining in step with Pakistani defeats in wars against India. Ambedkar writes that the Indian Muslims were not prepared to admit defeat at the hands of Hindus and claimed they would always prove superior to the Hindus. To prove the eternal superiority of Muslims over Hindus, it was proposed by one Maulana Akbar Shah Khan of Najibabad in Uttar Pradesh, in all seriousness, that the Hindus and Muslims should fight, under test conditions, a fourth battle on the same fateful plain of Panipat. The Maulana accordingly issued a challenge to freedom fighter Madan Mohan Malviya in the following terms. "If you, Malaviyaji, are making efforts to falsify the result at Panipat, I shall show you an easy and excellent way of testing it. Use your well-known influence and induce the British government to permit the fourth battle of Panipat to be fought without hindrance from the authorities. I am ready to provide a comparative test of the valor and fighting spirit of the Hindus and the Muslims. As there is 7 crores, 70 million Muslims in India, I shall arrive on a fixed date on the plain of Panipat with 700 Muslims representing the 7 crores of Muslims in India. And as there is 22 crores, 220 million Hindus, I allow you to come with 2,200 Hindus. The proper thing is not to use cannon, machine guns, or bombs. Only swords and javelins, spears, bows and arrows, and daggers should be used. But anyway, do come as a spectator. For on seeing the result of this battle, you will have to change your views, and I hope there will be then an end of the present discord and fighting in the country. In conclusion, I beg to add that among the 700 men that I shall bring, there will be no Pathans or Afghans, as you are mortally afraid of them. So I shall bring with me only Indian Muslimans of good family, who are staunch adherents of Shariat. Intolerable hatred. In a manifesto on Hindu-Muslim relations issued in 1928, Khwaja Hassan Nizami, an Indian Sufi saint of the Chishti Islamic order, declared, "Muslims are separate from Hindus. They cannot unite with the Hindus. After bloody wars, the Muslims conquered India, and the English took India from them. The Muslims are one united nation, and they alone will be masters of India. They will never give up their individuality. They have ruled India for hundreds of years and have a prescriptive right over the country. The Hindus are a minor community in the world. They are never free from internecine quarrels. They believe in Gandhi and worship the cow. They are polluted by taking other people's water. The Hindus do not care for self-government. They have no time to spare for it. Let them go on with their internal squabbles. What capacity have they for ruling over men? The Muslims did rule, and the Muslims will rule." Then there was Maulana Azad Sabhani, a pan-Islamist cleric from Kanpur and a member of the All India Khilafat Conference, who, in his 1939 speech at Sylhet, revealed the mindset of the Indian Muslim cleric. "If there is any eminent leader in India who is in favor of driving out the English from this country, then I am that leader. In spite of this, I want that there should be no fight with the English on behalf of the Muslim League. Our big fight is with the 22 crore, 220 million of our Hindu enemies who constitute the majority. Only 4.5 crores, 45 million, Englishmen have practically swallowed the whole world by becoming powerful. And if these 22 crore Hindus, who are equally advanced in learning, intelligence, and wealth as in numbers, if they become powerful, then these Hindus will swallow Muslim India and gradually even Egypt, Turkey, Kabul, Mecca, Medina, and other Muslim principalities. Subhani's biggest fear was that Hindus would one day dominate the world. The English are gradually becoming weak, that they will go away from India in the near future. So if we do not fight the greatest enemies of Islam, the Hindus, from now on and make them weak, then they will not only establish Ramrajya in India, but also gradually spread all over the world. It depends on the 9 crore, 90 million Indian Muslims either to strengthen or to weaken them, the Hindus. So it is the essential duty of every devout Muslim to fight on by joining the Muslim League, so that the Hindus may not be established here and a Muslim rule may be established in India as soon as the English depart. He concluded by saying that the Muslim world is never safe in the hands of 22 crore Hindu enemies. Again, in 1946, when the Pakistan movement was in its most virulent phase, Muslim leaders organized huge rallies calling for a separate Muslim homeland. They threatened to revive the days of Genghis Khan, and Halaka Khan, Hulagu Khan. Cheered by tens of thousands of Muslims and motivated by demagogues such as Maulana Maududi of the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Muslim League would threaten Hindus with a fate similar to what they had met at the hands of the Mongols. Their hatred was matched only by their ignorance. The truth is the Mongols never harmed Hindus, but were instead the scourge of Muslims, becoming Islam's greatest enemy. Wave upon wave of Mongol attacks flattened many Islamic strongholds across Central Asia, Persia, and Arabia, killing millions of Muslims. Genghis Khan was a shamanistic sky worshipper who wanted to conquer Islamic lands and wipe out all traces of Islam from the world. The number of Muslims he killed is estimated at 6 million.